What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. The wildfires in Los Angeles have totally taken over the narrative of this game. The Rams and the Vikings are officially going to be playing in State Farm Stadium in Arizona. We're going to talk about the game preview, any kind of details that we want to talk about, a deep dive on the Vikings and the Rams ahead of Monday night's playoff game. But first, and of the utmost importance, Nick, you're in California. How are you, and how are all the people around you?
I'm okay right now. Redondo Beach is where I'm at. So I've been able actually to house some people that have been in evacuation zones and whatnot. And it's been scary and terrible. And I pray for everybody that was affected by this because this really sucks. And, it's affecting the Rams and they have to play in Arizona, but it just really sucks to see everyday people just get, their whole lives just completely up in smoke. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, families are being uprooted, houses are burning down. Prayers to the first responders, to the fire squads, to everybody that's on top of this, that has to manage this on a day-to-day basis. And it seemed like it was going to get a little bit better, but it just progressively gotten worse. So it has led the NFL to make the decision that, in the interest of public safety, that Monday's wildcard game has been moved to Arizona. And not to downplay the severity of the issue in California, but when you look at the spread overall, the Rams opened up as 1.5 or 2.5 point underdogs. The spread went over to 1.5 a couple of days ago, and now it's back up to 2.5 in light of this move. So if you want them on the money line, they're plus 114. A large majority of money line bettors have taken the Vikings at 64%. It's also favoring the spread and the over in terms of leaning towards the Vikings. So, it looked like if things were moving in the right direction in terms of the Rams finally having home field advantage. The Rams were going to have a legitimate home crowd in their home stadium. And now you're going to have to be rooting for the Commanders and the Packers to lose if you want to potentially host a divisional round game and if you were to beat the Vikings. So it's just unfortunate. You feel really, really bad for all the Rams fans who already purchased or already plan to travel and go to the stadium. And now I think that there's something going on in terms of season ticket holders. They have an opportunity to bid on the game and potentially get tickets for this one. So again, just prayers to everybody. Hope everybody is doing okay. Make sure to like and comment down below and let us know what's going on with your guys' situation, if you're okay, if you had to evacuate, and if you're still planning to make the game. So it's been a little bit crazy, but this is the way the football goes. It's just you kind of got to persevere and try to figure out a way to practice through all this stuff and get prepared to play a playoff game.
Yeah, it's a weird ball, can bounce any weird way. I want to give a shout out to the Vikings fans that I've seen on Twitter that are kind of putting a message out to other Vikings fans that are saying, like, just, oh, wow, look at that. You got a tweet. Be super cool to every Rams fan you see. Buy them a beer, show them some love, show them some support. I mean, this stuff is bigger than football, really. What's going on with everybody here in California, it sucks. I mean, it's the air quality. It's like everybody's getting it. You walk outside, it smells like you're at a fire pit. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I don't think it being played in Arizona is that big of a disadvantage for the Rams as much as, like, yes, it is. I mean, if you want to think about it mentally, yes, they won't be playing at home. Yes, they're probably not going to have as big of a home crowd because it's in Arizona. But, I mean, also mentally, I think every player now out there, probably same with the Chargers, are going to want to win that game to represent California more so now than ever. So, you have like a chance to really put the city on your back and win a playoff game and, continue the strength of LA and show it on the football field.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because you mentioned that, and then you look at some of the past performances of each team in State Farm Stadium. It's ironic that they're playing in State Farm Stadium, considering all the political issues and everything that's going on with insurance. But this was from Blaine Grisak, one of our good buddies of the pod. He said the Vikings haven't won in State Farm Stadium in Arizona since 2008. They've played there 3 times since. They lost in 09, they lost in 15, they lost in 21. The Rams, however, are 9-1 in their last 10 trips to Arizona, and the only loss came earlier this season in week 2, where they allowed 41 points to the Arizona Cardinals. And Rams fans have been chiming in all day long, all week long. So some really interesting takes from Rams fans. This is from DEA David Jones at Carl No Winslow. He said that Sean McVay has only lost 1 game in Arizona, and it was this year. Optimistic Rams fan / satisfied Dodgers fan said that the Rams are on a 5-game road winning streak. Sosa chimed in and said that the Rams are going to host a playoff game in Arizona. The last time that the Cardinals did that was in 2015. I'm trying to smile through the pain. And then, as I just mentioned, from Jim Youngblood 53, he said that the irony of playing in State Farm Stadium since State Farm canceled tons of insurance policies in Southern California is rather ironic. So it's crazy how this stuff happens. And if you're following, everything from a news perspective, it's really just unbelievable to see this all unfold. And, California is no stranger to the fires, but this one just seems more severe, more drastic, and more impactful than others of the past. So it really is terrible. And, the last time, I think we all remember this one, the Rams were originally scheduled to play in Mexico City, but the NFL ruled that the Mexico City Stadium was not prepared to host an NFL game, NFL teams. And I think LA was in the middle of the Woolsey wildfires at that point too. So there was still wildfires that were continuing all throughout Los Angeles. The Rams actually ended up hosting the game. I believe it was in the Coliseum, and they beat the Chiefs 54-51 in one of the most memorable regular season games in NFL history. So crazy stuff happens when this kind of stuff rears its ugly head. Matthew Stafford is going to be real supportive, and he has been in press conferences of the first responders, of the police staffs, of everybody in Los Angeles that is helping to support these wildfires. So, the crazy stuff happens, and it hopefully goes in the direction of Rams fans because the city seems like they really need it at this point.
Yeah. I mean, to take out the idea of not playing at home, even though you won the division, absolutely terrible. But just to go back, if you can flash the screen of Goff doing the layup on the goalpost.
Yeah.
I mean, this was probably my favorite football game I ever watched, regular season football game I ever watched, just because, the Rams Super Bowl, when they were in it and they won, it was fantastic. It was cool to watch them win in that way, but it was also torture. This was just like straight fun, and it felt like the city of LA was like finally accepting the Rams for the Rams. And look at those great yellow jerseys, like that is a perfect jersey to me. The yellow on yellow, it matches the helmet so well. I'm just so shocked that they saw that. They saw them win that game in such amazing fashion, and they completely ditched that whole color rush variant. It's just such a shame.
I'm hoping in 2025. We're in 2025, but I'm hoping for next season that they bring back some kind of color rush or some kind of variation of the old look, even though the modern classics are back in fashion. So I want to get into this one a little bit. I know obviously this is kind of overwhelming for a lot of people, all the situations that are happening with the wildfires, but there still is a game to be played. So we still want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and providing a pretty decent preview for you guys. So just to jump in, we'll start with Matthew Stafford. It is definitely time to steal some souls. This is Matthew Stafford's MO. This is the time where he usually steps up. He's been incredible in the playoffs. And if you look at these stats, most passing yards per game in playoff history, minimum 5 games. Matthew Stafford's at the very top of the list. In terms of passing yards per game this season, the Rams aren't blowing anybody out of the water, but to look at a 5-game sample size, to see Matthew Stafford's name, Kurt Warner's name, Dan Fouts, Drew Brees, this is what Matthew Stafford's MO is, and this is what he's all about. He said in a presser recently, I think it was yesterday, he said, every time we suit up, we're the Los Angeles Rams. We play for the people of this community, the people that support us, and this week this will be another example of that. So going back to this other graphic, I want to talk about Matthew Stafford against the blitz because something and this is from Jacob Wayne at Wayne Betts on Twitter. He said, something I'm watching for in the Vikings and Rams game will be Brian Flores dialing up the blitz against Matthew Stafford. The Vikings are the most blitz-heavy defense in the NFL, hovering right around 40%. Matthew Stafford has torched the blitz this season, ranking 3rd in yards per attempt, 4th in EPA per dropback, and 4th in DVOA. And the Rams like to get going on early downs. They like to be able to create some explosives on earlier downs to alleviate some of the pain of being in third and behind the sticks, because we know how terrible they are when they're 3rd and 10 and further. And the Vikings, and this is from Next Gen Stats, the Vikings have brought the blitz at the highest rate in the NFL. We mentioned at 41.8%. It includes 46.2% on early downs. So that's why I mentioned that we want to see this Rams team and Matthew Stafford to be able to alleviate the blitz on early downs, because the Vikings like to bring it early on in every series. So
yeah, I mean, that's Flores' MO. You know, he loves to bring the blitz. He loves to show you one thing and then change it, you know, after the snap, post blitz. So I mean, it's something that Stafford's just been really, really good against this season and throughout his whole career. So you're hoping to see some of that. And at the same time, Flores I think he's interviewing for a couple head coaching jobs. So I feel like whenever that's in play, luckily this year, you know, nobody from the Rams staff is getting interviewed, which is great. I feel like when that's in play, it just adds like a air to the entire postseason in a way. It's like outside noise that you're bringing in. We've had to deal with it for quite some time. So now to not have any of that, and for the Vikings and most of the teams on the trail to have that is kind of nice.
Yeah, the only person in terms of the Rams' staff members that's interviewing for any type of position is somebody in the front office. And the name is slipping my mind right now. So nobody in the coaching staff. And I thought it was really interesting too, because Ryan Fitzpatrick and Big Wit were just on a podcast, and Fitzpatrick was calling Brian Flores a dictator. And he was saying, hopefully he learned a lot in terms of his relationships with Kevin O'Connell and the way that he treats people and players. But I think, you know, trying to change your persona, trying to, you know, get prepped for interviews. You and I both know how exhausting an interview can be, right? Like, it is just emotionally draining in all phases. You're trying to give the best of what you have to offer in every single word and every part of the conversation. So when you have to kind of dedicate yourself to those kind of things, and it's also Brian Flores, I thought was really interesting too, in that short week on Thursday Night Football, they were so focused on Cooper Kupp and some of the other members of the Rams' offense, and the Rams weren't necessarily disclosing what was happening with Puka Nacua. So he had already a built-in excuse. So, you know, this could be the same kind of situation where maybe Brian Flores' game plan isn't as crisp as we've seen in recent weeks.
Well, I think anybody who's watched the Rams, and I'm sure the Vikings are doing their homework, or good or smart organization, Puka is going to get all that attention, and as he should, because Kupp this season, you know, coming back, has not been, you know, I mean, he's been an amazing mind. He's a coach on and off the field. He's amazing, but this season in particular, he hasn't had the same impact that he's had in years prior. So it's going to be, and they're going to focus on Puka like they did Kupp. And I think that's going to make this a lot harder for the Rams. And you're going to need players like Demarcus Robinson to step up. I got a notification today, something about his DUI, but I like it went away before I could see it. He's playing, right? Demarcus Robinson.
So I haven't heard anything otherwise.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna assume that he is. You're, like him and Tutu, I think you're going to need to break open the top a little bit more in this game, kind of like how we did with the Bills earlier in the season, and use that because it's going to be it may be more difficult to get Puka the ball if it's not a jet sweep than it was last time we played Minnesota.
I totally agree. And you're going to need some explosives. You're going to need to, but also have, you know, your things like your play action built in, your run game well executed, your offensive line rolling. And in terms of play action too, these are the best quarterbacks, best QBR on play action this season. So it's Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford's number 3, and then Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. So the difference with a lot of these guys is there's the threat of the quarterback taking off and running. So like the Jordan Loves, the Jalen Hurts, the Lamar Jacksons on play action, like you're just sucking those linebackers in at full capacity. And you really kind of have your pick of the litter in terms of one-on-one matchups in the secondary when you're able to do that. But with Matthew Stafford, there's no real threat to run. But like Nick, to your original point in terms of like, there's going to be a lot of focus on Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp is trying to channel this same energy that he brought to the table back in 2021. And you could see it on Twitter. You could just see it on all of his social media platforms. This is his second season. I'm rocking the Cooper Kupp shirt for a reason, because I do feel like whenever he's in Arizona, I feel like there's an opportunity for him to play a big game. But also, playoff Cooper Kupp is a different breed of player. That 2021 season was the best receiving season of any receiver in NFL history, all throughout the regular season and the playoffs. So if he gets rolling, and the Bills game is a perfect example where you could use play action, you can get some explosives with your top 2 pass catchers, and to be able to consistently run the ball, they are going to be really, really tough to stop, especially when you combine that with the fact that Brian Flores is interviewing and this defense is coming off a really tough week where they just struggled mightily with everything that the Lions were throwing at them. Whether it was the run game, Jahmyr Gibbs, or it was the hook and ladder plays, and it was the Ben Johnson creativity, the Vikings struggled defensively.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. They did. It was their worst game, I think, of the season. But just to go back on Cooper Kupp a little bit, I think everybody, like every Rams fan, was watching. Oh, geez, I think I just broke my chair. Every Rams fan was watching the Twitter poll or like the NFL thing where it was like, can Cooper Kupp have a season like 2021? They were showing all the highlights from that postseason, and if we get like 1/4 of what he brought to the table, then I think we are poised to go back to the NFC Championship, just because I think, he was phenomenal there. I also don't think he gets the props that he deserves for having that amazing season. I feel like people are so quick to immediately forget about that. Like Triple Crown, Super Bowl MVP. I don't even know how many touchdowns he had in the season.
Could you imagine, though? You're so right. Could you imagine if that was Jamar Chase and the Bengals were going to play in the Super Bowl? He won a Triple Crown and a Super Bowl MVP. People would crown him the next Jerry Rice. But that doesn't happen with Cooper Kupp, because it was really just that one season where he was exploding onto the scene and just tearing up everybody. And then he's just been riddled with injuries. It's just been unfair the way his body's been breaking down. But yeah, to your point, that if it were anybody else, if it were Justin Jefferson, any of the top receivers in the league, they would be crowning that receiver as one of the best of all time already. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that Coop hasn't gotten the praise, but this is an opportunity, second season, for them to do it all over again. And I think it's going to be really interesting, especially if the Vikings offense gives them opportunities the way that the Vikings did to the Lions in Week 18. I thought this was definitely something that needed to be shared in terms of what was going on with Kevin O'Connell over the past, couple of weeks, but more so in Week 18. The fact that there has been 1,328 games in the last 5 NFL regular seasons combined, and the Vikings in Week 18 had the worst red zone success rate of any qualifying team in any single game over the last 5 seasons. So the Vikings ran 14 plays in the red zone in Week 18. Out of those, only 1 was successful. Their 7.1% red zone success rate was the worst by any team in a game in the last 5 seasons, and it's a minimum of 10 red zone plays. So, if they're going to give opportunities to this Rams defense, I feel like the Rams defense in those short yardage, 4th and 1 red zone situations, they've been able to step up. You look at the Cardinals game.
Yeah,
you look at the Seattle game, and you look at the San Francisco game, like the Bills game, they have all big 4th and 1 stops, red zone stops that have swung the momentum in the direction of the Rams.
Yeah, I watching that Vikings game last week and seeing them, it felt like they couldn't make up their mind. It was like, we don't trust our kicker. Well, now we actually want to kick this one, and then we're going to trust our kicker again here. And it was like, when you're going up against the Lions, I think you have to ride their mentality, just because it's like they're going to go for it. So you should also go for it. I mean, personally, I think that's how you got to play them, because you have to give yourself every opportunity. And they did that in the beginning, and they got stopped, and then there was that overthrow to Jefferson. And then they were like, okay, now we should actually kick. And then after they decided to go back to the kicking, that's when they really lost it all. Yeah. The kicker misses, and then the game completely breaks open. Even though I thought, overall that was a good game, like a great called defensive game up until, the bridge broke. But I mean, like, we're not the Lions. McVay doesn't have that guy in his ear telling him like, oh, this is the time to go for it. I think he's a little more conservative than people probably think they are. So, I mean, personally, if it like they'll probably lean on their kicker a little more in this one than they did last time. And their kicker's not that great. So
no, he stinks.
I
Yeah,
would
no,
I would give the edge to Cardi, shockingly.
the edge to Cardi. We knew we were going to mention Cardi in this one. Let's bring up the graphic that we used in the last episode. It's good from 58, good from 57. How about Josh Cardi was the special teams player of the month this past month?
That makes sense. I mean, think of like the Jets game, absolutely needed him in that one. And the San Francisco game, he scored all of our points because Stafford couldn't score that touchdown when they called like a QB draw. It was so weird.
Yeah, he's been totally redeeming himself as of recent weeks. And I think a large portion of the story for this game is all going to be about Sam Darnold. Like the fact that we really haven't dug into Sam Darnold a ton yet is important. I want to talk about his offensive line for 1 second, because it felt like when the Vikings offensive line took a turn in the wrong direction, it was when Christian Darrisaw went out. And that was, I think it was the injury where he was going up against Jared Verse. And it happened, I think, the play right before halftime, where the Vikings were like undecided on Thursday night if they were going to like run a play or not. They ended up running a play and their left tackle got hurt. So this is since Christian Darrisaw suffered an injury in week 9. The Vikings have allowed the third highest pressure rate in the NFL this season at 39.3, including a league high 40.6 pressure rate since left tackle Christian Darrisaw suffered an injury in week 9. Their left tackle, excuse me, Cam Robinson allowed a league high 56 pressures and a 17% one-on-one pressure rate since joining the Vikings in week 9. So Jared Verse, defensive rookie of the year, pressure, collapsing the pocket, squeezing the pocket, and forcing Sam Darnold under pressure consistently, because they have some good stats on Darnold too in terms of how he handles pressure. I just want to flash this one on the screen too, because this is from Sosa. No quarterback was pressured more often than Sam Darnold, 22 times in week 18 per Next Gen Stats. No wonder he didn't play a great game. Simple as that. The defensive line needs to show up in this game, and I think they will. Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, like they are young, hungry. And I think the way that the Rams have been disguising some of their pressure looks has been really interesting. They look like they'll blitz. They look like they have a sixth line of scrimmage. They'll drop 2 in coverage, and they'll primarily rush with 4. And Sam Darnold being pressured on nearly 50% of his dropbacks is going to be a reason why Sam Darnold ends up losing the game and ending the Viking season at some point this playoffs, if it's not this week.
I was going to say, how confident are you that that's going to happen this week? Or I guess next week, technically.
I'm confident it's going to happen this week. Based on the way that their offensive line is playing, I think it's their biggest weak point next to the quarterback. I know it's crazy to say in a season where they went 14-3, but I still don't believe in the quarterback when he's under pressure. It's not like a Matthew Stafford. Even like a Jared Goff has improved immensely under pressure when the blitz is coming. This is still Sam Darnold. He's still, he had a bum ankle. It looked like I was reading some reports that he potentially hurt one of his hands. I think it was his throwing hand a couple of weeks ago. So to be able to evade pressure when the pocket is being squeezed against the defensive rookie of the year, who had 77 pressures this season, and then you combine it with guys like Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner, who both have over 8 sacks, it's going to be a really tough going for Sam Darnold to just beat this team with his arm if he can't do it with his legs.
I mean, he really hasn't been trying with his legs recently either.
No.
This is like the NFC of like the Frankenstein quarterbacks coming back from the dead. People wrote off Goff and #1 seed. Same with Baker. Same with Darnold. And then you kind of have like the OG, who Stafford, who like reinvented his career, hopefully going up against most of them. And I would lean personally with the person that's got it done already, even though he's aging and his toolkit isn't as great as it was when he got it done, and the toolkits of other guys are far greater. But I mean, with a hurt Jones, I feel like we stack up talent wise. Like I would give us the edge. I mean, that's when it gets scary when you go further down the line, when it's like Philly talent wise, I would give them the edge. Detroit talent wise, I would give them the edge.
Yeah, I mean, you saw how this team matched up against the Vikings, a few weeks ago. You saw the Lions lay out a blueprint. A lot of it was man coverage on the back end. A lot of it was front end pressure. But the Rams can replicate some of those things. If not man coverage, they could roll out a lot of their dime looks, which they've been relying on a ton. And I do feel like having that many defensive backs out there while still being able to bring pressure and get home with 4 is going to be extremely valuable in this game. And you're capable of doing that against a guy like Sam Darnold. So a couple of keys. They don't have these like prepared Dean's keys, anything like that. But there's one thing that, Nick, I know you and I have always talked about this entire season, and Blaine brought this up. I think it was earlier today or late yesterday. He said that it's going to be critical for the Rams to start fast on Monday Night Football. They have failed to score in the first quarter touchdown in 13 games this season. One of the 4 that they did was against the Minnesota Vikings. So to be able to start fast, to be able to get Cooper Kupp targets, to get Matthew Stafford in a rhythm, to get Kyron going, to get 3 or 4 first downs on that first series and maybe 1 explosive is going to pay dividends for the remainder of the game.
Yeah. Wait, flash that again for me. Let me see that one more time. I shout out Blaine. I love Blaine. Yeah, we're not going to start fast. It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened all season. It happened kind of in the Vikings game. I feel like they scored first, so it was more of like a retaliation. And I would say, I would even say that doesn't really constitute starting fast because your defense didn't start fast. We don't start fast. It's not who we are. I've accepted that. They're going to have to win this game how they win every other game. They're going to have to like wear out the other team. The defense is going to have to be crazy impactful, and the offense is going to have to click. And they're going to have to do it early. But I mean, I'm expecting a 3-and-out on the first drive. It happens. It's like every week. It's a 3-and-out on the first drive.
And to expect that coming off of a 2-week stretch, and then a late Monday Night Football game where the starters were arrested, and then there's been all this drama, limited practice time. Like, yeah, I think that's fair to expect. But this team is so weird that they could come out and score early and score fast, and then struggle in the second half. Who knows what's going to happen with this team?
This is the team from like at least in the Stafford era, that makes the least sense. Like from week to week, you really don't know what you're going to get. Outside of the defense consistently playing well, but then our best win of the season against the Bills, defense did not play well. So it is totally up in the air of what is possible for this Rams team this season. So I don't really know what to expect. I'm like, I usually feel like I have a better finger on the pulse of the team. And this year, I really don't know. I feel like we could win close or we could lose in the blowout. But I think it's way more likely that we win close.
You know how I feel, Nick?
How?
I feel like I respect all teams, but I fear none.
That's what's got Dean feeling really nicey.
Sean McVay saying that we respect all but fear none, I think is the mentality that you're going to carry in alongside of everything that's going on with the wildfires. So I think you get a combination of potentially starting fast. You get a combination of your defense, specifically the guys up front, generating consistent pressure and potentially turnovers. And then the other one I'm going to say is the red zone. Because if the Rams can be better in the red zone as they have been from week 11 on, and the Vikings can kind of continue this trajectory of going downhill and lack of, simple play calls where you're literally just giving the ball off to your running back in the red zone, which is instead of just throwing the ball 15 times, simple is better sometimes in the red zone. So those would be my big things alongside of Joshua McCarty remaining himself.
Yeah, I will say this. To quote ABBA, the history book on the shelf is always repeating itself. If you were to talk to a Vikings fan, which I have several good friends in my life who are Vikings fans. One of my friends who I housed last night is a Vikings fan. And I asked him, I said, what do you think? Do you think it's going to, they're going to win? He was like, no, I don't at all. This is who they are. They're really good. They get to the playoffs and they lose. And I was like, you said the same thing when it was Kirk Cousins against Sam Darnold. And I thought you were crazy because that Vikings team I thought was like the team of destiny that year. And he was like, yeah. He told me, he was like, when that game was happening, I chose to go on a hike, stay overnight somewhere and not watch it because I knew that they would disappoint me. And I was like, that is intense. I was like, you truly have no faith in them.
It's so crazy because you go back
to he was like, yeah, I have zero faith. They are winning every game by a hair. They don't deserve that spot, and they're going to lose. And I watched the whole game. I think I even bet on the Vikings. Didn't trust this lifelong Vikings fan. And then Kirk Cousins throws it short of the sticks on a 4th down conversion, and it ends the game.
Mhm.
And I texted him immediately, and I was like, I can't believe it. You were dead on this Vikings game. And he didn't text me back till the next day because he didn't even bring his phone. And he was like, yeah, dude, like, obviously. It's like that's who the Vikings are. And I hope, like, it would be nice if the Vikings were like a really good team, just for the betterment of the NFL. You know, they've been to 5 Super Bowls, they've won none. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's not who the Rams are. Like, that's not who the Rams are at all. Like, since they brought in McVay, and Snead has, you know, he was here during Fisher, but they kept Snead around, and they went out and, you know, they got great players, and they drafted right, and they built a culture. And I think that's the difference, is the culture. And I think the Rams have it. And they've had the sauce, the aura, whatever the hell the kids want to call it these days. They've had that for a consistent amount of time. And this is a game that they can absolutely win. So you're going up against a team that feels like they are cursed. And then the Rams, who have won in recent memory and are like brand new and like hot, and, you know, by Colin Cowherd's like America's new team. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's I'm glad you told that story, because the Vikings fan perspective, I'm sure, is, especially for millennials, like for the younger, you know, Vikings fans, it's overwhelmingly negative. But you go back to like the 70s and the 80s, like they owned the Rams in the playoffs. Like they beat them a couple of times in huge games, divisional rounds, NFC championships, to go to the Super Bowl. And you know, the way that it changes over generations is fascinating. But you're right, the Rams they're that team now where you feel like they have the culture, they have the coach, they have the quarterback, and Vikings fans should be on that same level of terrified as they have been over the past couple of years.
We have not always been that team. As Rams fans who've been here for a while know that has not been our forever MO. Like we was suffered through very bad football for a lot of years, post the greatest show on turf.
It's crazy. When you talk about the greatest show on turf, one of my first memories, because we were only 7 or 8 years old when the greatest show on turf, when they went to the Super Bowl in '99, that divisional round game with Randy Moss and Chris Carter. That Vikings team, I think, was 14-2. They were really damn good. And the greatest show on turf proved why they were the greatest show on turf very, very quickly. And I still remember watching back on the DVD and just remembering back, like over the last, 10, 15 years, of like how great that team really was. And the Vikings were the first stop. So it's crazy how it all kind of comes full circle. But
yeah,
we'll see what happens on Monday.
My first football memory is running around the house after the Rams won the Super Bowl. I was probably like 4 or 5. Like, I didn't really know what was going on, but like I saw it with my own eyes, and our dad was crying, and I was like, "Oh my! Like, this is awesome!" And we had the balloons and everything. But let me just leave you with this, because it feels like we're wrapping this up. I got 3 plays for you. I'm going to go Chargers -3 early game. Give me Steelers +10. Don't love that. Don't love it. But it's an official pick. And then Rams +2.5.
Okay. I actually like the Steelers +10. That's a large playoff spread.
I know it feels like it's too much, but also the Ravens, like, Lamar can go off. It just, for whatever reason, the Steelers are the team that like sometimes have him under arrest.
Steelers are weird. The Steelers had 10 wins 6 weeks ago. And
I know.
at the end of the season, 10-7. Yeah.
I just love the meme where it's like Mike Tomlin after he's gotten 10 wins. It's just him, like, it's like somebody in their car looking like Mike Tomlin, like, you know what I'm talking about?
I thought you were going to say how Mike Tomlin, whenever they show him on the sidelines in the freezing cold, looks like he has the suds.
From SpongeBob? Yeah. We do not care. We do not care. I love Tomlin.
Me too. All right. We appreciate you guys. Hope everybody's staying safe. Hopefully this was, 35 minutes of entertainment, comedy, everything that you guys could want to, take your minds off of this crazy stuff that's happening in LA and all over California. So We appreciate you guys. As always, go Rams. Stay safe. If you're going to the game and you're heading to Arizona, leave a comment. Tell us about your trip. You're bringing family, whatever. Tell us about it. We want to know about it. And as always, we appreciate you guys, and go Rams.
Yeah, sending love to everybody who was affected. Thanking God for all of the first responders, firefighters, everybody that's helping out in any way. And yeah, it's a dark time in California, but don't let it kill your spirit, because it's a lot of good in the world as well.
Indeed. We love you guys. Go Rams.